Hey everybody, welcome to the holiday program, week 2 Facebook Live. So let me look in the group. So I always like to explain in case this is your first time doing Facebook Live. I have my phone in front of me here set up to record me, and then I have my computer down here just so that I can see what's going on, and sometimes it's easier for me to see the questions here. So if you comment on the video, and the comments sort of run on the side of the video here, and once I get rolling, for the most part, I will be focusing just on what I'm saying, and then I'll read the comments once I'm done with that, because if I read the comments the whole time, I get totally distracted. But let me jump into the group on my computer and see if I'm actually live, and see if I see my video playing. Hi Machi. Okay, I see that somebody joined, so I'm assuming that it worked. It's only been like one time where I've tried to be live and it didn't actually work. So I should probably just assume that it's working, but I always feel better. Ah, good, there I am. Once I see the video. All right. All right, so first I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this free 31-day self-care course. I think it's such a good time of year to do this, because as we know, this time of year can get crazy. Hi, Lynn. And can get overwhelming, and it's easy to get ourselves completely stressed out. And I say to get ourselves completely stressed out. Hello, Anne. Hi, Machi. Hi, Lynn. It's easy to get ourselves stressed out, and I say get ourselves stressed out because we really do it to ourselves. We really, really and truly do, because we can manage so much more and so many more things on our plate when we are reaching for inner peace, when we are reaching for thoughts that make us feel better, when we are staying aligned with a feeling of joy and a feeling of freedom and a feeling of having your own power back and having the power in your life to handle whatever comes your way with ease. Because it's not that hard stuff won't happen. Hard stuff always happens. That's a part of life. And it's not that your family is suddenly going to change, and this holiday year, the things that usually trigger you are going to be different, because most likely they haven't changed. But what can change, and what will cause the biggest change in your life, is by changing what's going on with you internally. Because by doing that, you truly start supporting yourself. And that is what self-care is all about. You know, I say this in the introduction video that I did to this class, which is, hey Molly, which is, you know, I used to think that self-care was all about massages and manicures and all of that kind of stuff. And certainly taking time for ourselves and caring for ourselves in that way is important. But I really think of self-care as something much bigger and much deeper than that, because it's about how we treat ourselves and how we talk to ourselves and how we support ourselves and how we show up in the world. And that's internal, you know, how we speak to ourselves, noticing what we're speaking about, supporting ourselves every single day, and treating ourselves with as much respect and kindness as possible. Because most of the women that are attracted to the classes that I do and that join my classes tend to be givers, and we tend to be caregivers, and it's very natural for us to want to be kind and care for the people around us, right? But we rarely turn that back around on ourselves. We rarely show up for ourselves in that same supportive way. And when you think about it, it's crazy. It's like, why wouldn't we do that to ourselves? But most of us don't. And I know that for most of my life, I didn't. In fact, I was my hardest critic, and I was trapped in just, you know, continuous thoughts of fear and failure and not being good enough, and everybody else has everything figured out, and I'm just a big dummy who can't seem to get my act together, and completely ignoring my emotions, completely ignoring my needs in general, you know, my emotional needs, ignoring them, my physical needs. I didn't, it's crazy because I'm in, I'm in the nutrition world. I went to school, and I know a lot about what the body needs in terms of what it needs to feel its best and what you nourish yourself with to feel its best. And yet that was not a part of my life at all. Nourishment was not a part of my life at all. Food was simply, I had this love-hate relationship with food, and I was either starving myself and dieting to a crazy extreme, or I was on the opposite end where I was binging on all the foods that I wasn't allowed to have, usually after I drank. So I didn't have any self-care in my life at all. And again, self-care is really so much more than just massages. It's really about number one, which is what this whole free 31-day course is about, how you talk to yourself, how you support yourself. Because when you start doing that, what you do is you drive much needed joy into your life, right? And this gives you the energy that you need to show up in the world in a whole different way and to handle whatever comes your way. And during the holiday times when you have a million things going on, taking the time to start shifting your thoughts just a little bit every single day. No one is perfect when they start this path. You can't turn the ship around immediately, right? You start it, you notice that you start to feel better, and it sort of rolls along until eventually it becomes something you do, and you just know the feeling of feeling good, so you naturally reach for that. When you just get on this path, it takes a little while to turn the ship around. So be patient with yourself as you start that. But that's really, to me, what self-care is all about. And starting with the thoughts and starting to raise your awareness around what you think, around what you think about yourself, around what you think about the people around you, about the judgments, the criticisms of yourself and of the people around you, starting to raise your awareness of your habits, starting to raise your awareness of when you reach for food and when you overeat and when you overdrink and when you need to give yourself, emotional attention because you're feeling out of sorts. Just starting to raise your awareness around all of that is such a huge, huge step. So even if you feel like you're failing at this or you're doing it wrong or whatever, or if you find that you notice that you're about to binge or drink or do whatever you do to avoid feelings and you don't manage to get yourself back into an even place and so you binge anyway, know this. I remember this dawned on me way back when I started down this path many, many years ago. Conscious destructive choices, conscious self-destructive choices are a big step forward from unconscious destructive choices, right? If that makes sense, right? It's so much better to be consciously making decisions that don't support you than to be unconsciously making decisions that don't support you. Because conscious bad decisions or conscious unsupportive decisions are a step on the path. Because once you're aware, at least they're conscious, right? At least you're aware of what you're doing, and that means that you are on the path. And that means that eventually those conscious unsupportive choices will eventually lead to conscious supportive. So getting from unconscious unsupportive choices to conscious unsupportive choices is huge. Hi everybody, Jackie, Janie, so nice to see you. So keep that in mind. If you have a bad night or if you end up, or a bad day, or you end up not using the affirmations the way you hoped, or you end up binging, or you end up going out and drinking too much, or whatever you end up doing, keep yourself in check by saying, at least I'm making conscious decisions. At least I'm making conscious bad decisions. I used to laugh at myself when I recognized that, it gave me a feeling of relief because I was like, oh my God, at least I'm aware of the conscious bad decisions I'm making. And for me, I got on this path after my first marriage came to an end and I was in a really, really dark place. And I started a relationship with somebody who was a lot like my ex. And it was just sort of me repeating a pattern. And it was also just another place for me to hide. This new relationship was just a place for me not to deal, right? And I remember that when I saw this and I saw my patterns, I was like, at least I see it. At least I see it. At least I am noticing that I am making bad decisions. At least I am noticing that I'm reaching for a drink at this point of my life when I'm feeling a certain way. Like I've just kept reminding myself that I'm conscious of it, and one day I'm going to be able to get past this. Even if right now, even if right this second I'm not getting past it, even if I'm making the destructive choice right now, I'm conscious of the destructive choice. So that is big. And I kept reminding myself of that because, of course, when you have a desire to change your life and to stop doing things that, you don't want to hurt yourself, and when you have a desire to change, it's really common to start getting mad at yourself for not changing fast enough. Or when you're doing the things, even when you have the knowledge that you need to make a better choice, and even when you have tools to emotionally support yourself and you still keep making bad decisions, it's really easy to get down on yourself and say, I'm failing at this, I'm doing terrible at this, I am not, ever gonna fix this. Like it's easy to get on that path, but you have to keep pulling yourself back into a better feeling space, which is, even if I'm making destructive choices right now, I'm conscious of these choices. And I am learning something now that is going to help me unravel this so that down the road, I'm going to be making, hopefully as soon as the next decision or whatever, it doesn't have to be way down the road, but that I'm going to start making conscious, supportive decisions for myself. And I think it's important to recognize that, you're not completely checking out anymore. At least for me, before I got on this more conscious path, whatever you want to call it, and started to do this internal work, I was in such a place of completely checking out, completely unconscious, just, using whatever was around me, which, for a while I was in dark places, drugs, alcohol, this new relationship, like whatever I could to distract me from the fear was so unconscious, completely unconscious. Once I got on this path and started this beginning internal work, I was just, I started to really put my focus on the fact that now I was making conscious bad decisions. I remember almost laughing at myself because I was like, this is good, Heather, this is a good step forward. You're consciously making bad decisions. Awesome. So keep it light and keep telling yourself that instead of driving yourself into a hole when it doesn't go exactly the way you hoped, or when you continue to sabotage yourself in the way that you want, and you want to stop doing that. But know that you're on the right path. Know that by seeing these things with new eyes and by seeing them through a new lens, you're actually on the path to unraveling these things and to getting yourself back into a more balanced place where you can start making supportive, conscious, start to support yourself in a conscious way. And that's a really big deal, like that is definitely a step in the right direction. And it's just so much easier to be on this path this way, because then you get into this much easier vibe with yourself where you're not constantly either failing or not. It's like every step is a step in the right direction, even if it isn't, exactly what you had hoped. Even if you end up making a choice that doesn't support you, you can learn from that, and you can learn to lean into that, and you can learn to say, it's okay, I am going to get there. I know that I am on the right path. I know this feels right to me, and I can forgive myself, and I can believe that this will eventually work itself out because I'm learning what it is I need to learn on this path. So really keep that in mind as you start to do this beginner work and as you start to raise your awareness. And the other thing I want to talk about is sort of the process of change and how I teach this in my full course, because it's easy to also get on the path and then to immediately say, well, what's next? What happens next? And so I want to give you sort of an overview of the big picture of how this worked and how this worked in my own life, so that you can understand, hey Patty, sort of the big picture, but then I want you to really, once we talk about the big picture and you understand sort of the path or how this will most likely unfold for you, and it's not going to be the exact same for everybody because everybody is going to find the path that works for them. But generally, this is how in the years that I've been doing this now, I've found that it works. And it works a layer at a time, right? Like we can't see everything or know everything or change everything or turn that entire big ship around all at one time, right? It happens a layer at a time. And this very beginning work is just simply getting yourself out of this paranoid, stressful, anxious, fear-ridden, doom and gloom space that a lot of people who struggle to change tend to find themselves in because you've been struggling for so long. It's difficult to find hope or to believe that something's going to work, or you might have hope for a little while, but if it's a fad diet that's just focusing on the action and not getting at the thoughts and beliefs behind the action, then when you fall off, it's like you prove to yourself again that this isn't going to work or that something's wrong with you, right? So I understand how we get to these spaces. It's exactly how I got to that space. It's like when you try and change a million times and it doesn't work, it's really hard to feel like something's going to work. And that's why we always start with this inner work of changing the inner dialogue and starting to convince yourself that you have the power to change, because you really do. And until you start to believe that, it's like you have to pull yourself along or push yourself along. You have to motivate yourself to do the things that you know you need to do to reach your goals, right? And when you start internally instead and you spend some time starting to support yourself internally and starting to tell a different story, because the story of this is not going to work, something is wrong with me, I'm never going to be able to do this, that doesn't help you at all. That just keeps you stuck. But when you start to tell a different story, that I'm right where I need to be with this and I'm learning how to make change from the inside out, and you start to trust that feeling that you get, that feeling of this just feels right to me. It felt right to me. Like as soon as I started to do some of this internal work, even though I had no idea how it was going to work out and all I had was a book. You know, I had You Can Heal Your Life and I had me and that was it. I had no support. I had nothing. But there was a feeling inside of me that said, this is it. This is right. This is what feels good. Being nice to myself, even just a little bit, feels so much better. And I just trusted that feeling. And so that's what this first step is all about. And module 1 in my full course, Smaller Size, Bigger Life, is really about driving some much needed positivity and, you know, belief in yourself and taking your power back and recognizing your own thoughts and starting to empower yourself. And the reason why this first step is so important is because what happens when you spend some time getting on your own team and recognizing that when you start to internally change and you start to support yourself, you start to feel better. And when you do that, you start to open up your own creative mind. And suddenly the path that you need to take, or the actions that you need to take, or the right thing for you to try will just naturally unfold in a much easier way, because you won't be coming from this fearful place. You'll open up your creative mind and you'll find solutions, or you'll start to see things with a lot more clarity. You'll start to understand why you sabotage yourself a lot more. You'll start to get into this curious space instead of this critical space. You move from a very critical space of looking at things, which is, I suck, this is never gonna work, I can't believe this, what's wrong with me, I'm broken, right? That critical space, you move into a much more curious space, which is, you know, why have I struggled for so long? And what is it that I need to do in order to actually get me to my goals? And you'll just open up your mind and you'll start to see things in a new way. And so then the next step, after you drive some much needed positive energy into your life and you start to open up your creative mind and you start to get curious about things and you make yourself feel better now, because there's this idea, you know, everybody wants to change their life or wants to improve their health or lose weight or improve their relationship with food because they believe that they will feel better once they do that, right? It's the reason why we do anything is because we want to feel better. We think, you know, once we get the job, then we'll feel better. Once we get the boyfriend, then we'll feel better. Once we lose the weight, then we'll feel better. You know, it's always that idea that I'll do this thing so I can feel better over here. But the trick is, you can feel better now. You don't have to wait to feel better. And that's what this internal work is about. It's about finding ways to make you feel better now, focusing on things that make you feel better now, focusing your attention on what there is to appreciate about your life and what there is to appreciate about the journey that you're on. You know, focusing your thoughts on things that actually support you instead of tear you down. Just starting to raise your awareness, right? Like that is all about feeling better now. Because as you start to feel better now, like I just explained, you open up your creative mind. Once you start doing that, you will start to understand and see your blocks and your self-sabotaging blocks with a lot more clarity. You know, you'll start to be able to look at things and suddenly it'll just dawn on you. And of course, in my full course, I have a lot of different exercises that I walk you through to help you open up your mind to understand your blocks better. But understanding your blocks in a really compassionate way, in a place of compassion and curiosity and a good feeling space is important, because you don't want to try and look at your blocks from a critical view. That doesn't help at all. You'll just stay stuck, right? But once you get into a more open mind space, then you can say, what is it? Why don't I feel worthy enough? Or why am I scared to lose weight? What's this safety issue about? Oftentimes the safety issue comes if you were abused as a child, or if you were raped at some point in your life, or if you went through IVF and your body, you know, it didn't work, and so you feel like you have to protect yourself because you feel, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why you can feel unsafe and use the weight to protect you, but that's one of the issues that you might start to work through if that's the block for you. There's a lot of different blocks. Other blocks might be that you grew up, like me, in a really, really restrictive, diet-obsessed atmosphere. And so you have this idea, one of my deep-rooted beliefs, and a belief is just something you think again and again. One of mine was that, you know, food is something that you have to fear. Food is something that you need to be scared of. Food is not something that you should enjoy. Like that was a deep-rooted belief in my life. And so I had this crazy relationship with food because I thought through my childhood experiences that food was something I needed to fear, that food was a dangerous thing, which is crazy. Food is fuel. Food is what nourishes us. And so I had to learn how to change that belief. And any belief that you have that is no longer supporting you, you can change. And you can change that story. And that's what we do in the full course. We start to change that story, and you start to understand the things that are blocking you. And I talk about this more in the free class as well, and give you, that I'm releasing on January 1st, and give you an exercise that'll help you start to bring up your own blocks and beliefs. But again, once you've done this beginning internal work, it's easier to see things. You'll just, one day something will click and you'll be like, oh, no wonder I'm doing this thing to myself, right? And then you, through, you know, various things that I help you do in the class, and also just through, you change your story and you start to recognize that you have more power in your life than you realize, and you start to support yourself, and you tell a new story, and you start to truly believe, after you work on those blocks, you know, that you can get past this and you can change your life. And the sabotage starts to naturally kind of float away when you do that, because you're building a new belief system. And that is sort of, I guess if I wanted to, like, module 1 is getting on your own team. Module 2 is understanding these bigger blocks that keep you from reaching your goals so you're able to move past them. Then in module 3, we finally talk about intuitive eating and getting on the same team with your body and starting to pay attention to your body, because our bodies are these incredible machines. If you think about what your body does every single day to keep you alive, and I used to think about how I treated my body, the drugs I put into it, the alcohol I put into it, the non-nourishing foods I put into it, the way I would starve myself, the, you know, all the crazy things I did to my body, and it still managed to keep me alive. Like, these are amazing, complex machines, and they know, our bodies are so incredibly wise. And once you get past these blocks and you understand your blocks a little better, and you're being kind to yourself, and you take these things off a layer at a time, you'll start to be able to get into a more trusting place with your body, a place where you realize that your body is on your team. Your body is amazing, and you start to respect your body a lot more, and you start to get in tune with it, and you start to trust that when it needs food, it will let you know, and when it's full, it will let you know. and you start to build this much better relationship with your body, right? And hi, Janet. So that's sort of step 3 in my course. And then step 4 is the Nourish course, which is really about, how you can start changing your relationship with food by choosing foods that make you feel your best, right? Because for me and my wonky relationship with food, and what's funny is a lot of people who go into the nutrition field, I found and have kind of crazy relationships with food, because we go into it because we're thinking about it all the time, right? And we feel like we need more information to control it or whatever. So I'm not alone. If you're a nutritionist or an RD, or you work in the nutrition field and you're here, totally okay, like it's very common. But in any case, module 4, which is Nourish, is basically reintroducing you to a new way to eat, so that you're choosing foods that you enjoy, that makes you feel good, makes your body feel good, and that just feel right for you, because there isn't one way to eat. Some people, they try and tell everybody in the world, this is the way to eat, this is the way to lose weight, these are the foods you need, these are the foods that you don't. And I don't believe that at all. I believe that each of our bodies is different, and that each of us has the ability to figure out what foods feel best for us. And so that's what Nourish module 4 is all about, because at this point you have an easier relationship with food, and now you're experimenting with things, and you're seeing what feels better, and you're changing your relationship with food and your body and yourself, like a layer at a time, right? And this work, it's continuous, and you'll peel off one layer and you'll see another, and you'll see another. And then module 5 of my course is just called Live Big. And that's basically saying that you can take this kind of knowledge and use it to help you with whatever else you struggle with in life, whether that's relationships or getting a new job or whatever, because it's the same process for everything, right? It's like, what are the limiting beliefs and the blocks and the things that are keeping us from living the kind of life that we want? And so it's taking all of that knowledge and using it, applying it to anything in your life. So I like to know the big picture. I like to understand where I'm going to, even if I'm just at the beginning of the path. So I thought I would share that with you. Hey, Lynn, this is really hitting home. I appreciate the big picture. Oh, good, Molly. I'm glad I decided to share this. I didn't want to overwhelm anybody, but I think it helps to understand the big picture. So at least you know where you're going. But that being said, what I did way in the beginning was I would, even though I understood that I had all these beliefs and these blocks that I needed to work through, sometimes it would feel overwhelming to me when I realized how many different things I had picked up in my life, from my marriage, my parents, my crazy food stuff, the nutrition world. Like, it would start to feel overwhelming. So I would focus just on the day. I would focus just on the hour. I would focus just on the moment. I would say, even though I have no idea how I'm going to get over here and how I'm going to be able to get through all of that, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to assume that that's all going to unravel at the right rate for me. But what I'm going to do is focus on today. I'm going to focus on keeping myself in a better feeling place today. I'm going to focus my attention on the things that I can appreciate. And at the time when I started this work, I had moved into like this 400 square foot apartment. I had left all of my belongings behind because it was kind of a dramatic thing when the relationship I was in came to an end. And so I didn't have a lot of belongings. I was having severe panic attacks several times a day. I was working a nonprofit health job, and I didn't have a lot of money because this wasn't bringing in a lot of money. I had a fair amount of credit card debt, so I could have been focusing on all of the bad things, and all of the things like, how am I going to survive? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to do this? How am I going to be able to feel better? And I couldn't. I was like, nope, I'm not going to focus on all of that. I'm going to focus on the good. I'm going to really appreciate the fact that I have a roof over my head, and the fact that I have eyes that work so that I can read, because reading has always been a safe place for me. And these books, especially that You Can Heal Your Life book and The Power of Now by Louise Hay, they were so healing to me. So I would wake up and appreciate that. I would look around my little apartment and notice the things I loved about it. It was really cozy. I felt very safe there. It had, even though it was tiny, it had like, the kitchen was so small, the fridge was so small, but it was really clean, and it had beautiful hardwood floors, and I would just notice all the things I loved about it. And I would also say, well, even though I'm not making a lot of money, I have a job, and I have a job where the people there are kind and they love me and they care for me and they know I'm having a hard time right now, and they're supporting me through this. And I would focus on that. I'd focus on their support because they were so supportive of me, and I would focus on the good in my life and just keep myself focused in the now and not try and figure it all out. How am I going to get, because I would start to see things as I started to open up my mind. I would start to see how I ended up where I was and why I was so caught up in these destructive behaviors. And it could feel overwhelming at times. And I was always bringing myself back and being like, that's all right. Feels like a lot, but you're capable and you can handle this, and you don't have to handle it all right now. You don't have to get it all worked out right now. You don't have to make a big, hairy, scary deal of this right now. You're on the right path. You're doing really well. Just focus on what you can do right now to feel better. Focus on the thought you can think right now to feel better. And I would talk myself mentally into these soothing places, and that's how I started to get out of my panic attacks as well. Meditation helped with that so much, but starting to talk myself off the ledge, as I would call it, and just say, I'm going to focus on now. I'm going to focus on what I can do right now that's going to bring me joy and what's going to make me feel better. And I would put on movies that made me feel better. I would watch really simple, heartfelt television shows that make me feel better. Tinkerbell films back then, for some reason, gave me a lot of comfort. They still do. I think Disney is awesome. But in any case, I would just always be doing things to soothe and comfort myself, to talk myself into a better place and to keep it in the day, because you can get overwhelmed if you don't. And then I was just, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one emotional moment at a time, and I would just really keep it in the day. So I wanted to give you the big picture, and just after giving you the big picture, encourage you to not get too wrapped up with, oh my God, how am I going to get past this? And how's this all going to work out? And how is saying affirmations going to help me? And no. Just try and keep bringing it back to, the here and now. What can I do right now to make me feel good? What can I go for a walk? Can I, what can I do to care for myself? Can I go for a walk? Can I watch a movie that makes me feel good? Can I take a bath and just put on meditation music in the background and just relax and try not to think about anything? I didn't, because I had so much going on when I started this work. I had a divorce that was not working out because he didn't want to give me a divorce, and like all this crazy stuff over here. I had credit card debt over here. I was worried. There were so many things I could have made myself crazy about, but I didn't. I just kept bringing myself back, and I kept getting back to a good place in the here and now, and I kept saying, I know that I will find the way out of these things, and that things will fall out naturally if I keep bringing myself back to a good place. So that's what this beginning work is about. So even if it seems like, how can this connect to weight or anything else or food? It does. Trust me. You want to get yourself aligned into a better place so that you are able to get on a better feeling path, and you're able to start opening your mind in a different way so that you can see things and you can find all the inner wisdom inside of you. And these times that you spend learning how to support yourself internally, it's I think life-saving work, because it changes your life in such huge ways. So that is what I wanted to say about that. And then I'm going to answer the questions. I think having that big picture understanding will really help when I answer these questions as well, because anyway, let me get to the questions and I will explain. All right, so Stephanie says, one question that I have is, how do we accept and believe that we are worthy and deserving of all the good in our lives? I seem to be much better at resisting, denying, and not accepting of and or allowing the good. Good question, Stephanie. Really good question, because when we are so used, is that even the right way to say that? When it is so normal and habitual to constantly be saying, you know, on a subconscious or even a conscious level, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. And I don't deserve to be happy or healthy or any of it. If that is the story you've been telling for a while, it's going to take some time to untangle that and to get yourself back into a space of, I am a worthy person deserving of health and love and care. I mean, when I say that, I know that somewhere inside of you, you feel that, because every one of us knows that deep down. We know that we're worthy. We know that we deserve to be in a happy place. That's instinctual. You know, birds fly south instinctually. Bears hibernate for the winter instinctually. And they all drive them. I mean, you know, look at how nature is. It is naturally joyful, right? And we all are a part of that. And we instinctually know that we shouldn't be clouding our lives and our opinions of ourselves with these fears and these criticisms and these comparisons and this, you know, we just drowned ourselves in all of this, and we cut ourselves off from the joyful flow of life that we are all a part of. So you know somewhere deep inside that you're worthy of that. But if you've been telling a different story for a long time, it's going to take a while to turn that ship around. It's going to take a while to get back into a space where you believe that. And in, you know, like I just mentioned in module 2 of my course, you start to understand maybe some of your own blocks to why you don't believe you deserve that. So let me explain in my own life. You know, I was married for a long time, and this marriage sort of we both sort of took destructive paths. And I was convinced that, you know, I convinced myself that once this marriage came to an end and I was on my own, that I would stop hurting myself. You know, I thought that the marriage or the things that were going on in the marriage were part of the reason that I was hurting myself so much. And I thought once I got away from that, you know, instantly I would think I was worthwhile and I'd be able to take care of myself. And so the marriage came to an end, and I found myself, I stopped doing drugs once I left the marriage, but I found myself doing all these other super destructive things. You know, I immediately became a chain smoker. I was a social smoker and a drinker smoker before, and I drank a ton. So basically I smoked every night, but I started like chain smoking as soon as I left him, like 2 packs a day. Then I started this really destructive relationship with this man to distract me. And then my relationship with food, which was totally wonky before, it took a total worse nosedive, and I found myself starving myself into extremely scary sizes. And it was bizarre because I was the smallest size I'd ever been, and I was the most miserable I had ever been. This is when I started to have the panic attacks. And so turns out that leaving the marriage wasn't enough to make me believe that I was worthwhile and that I should take care of myself. My destructive behaviors spun out in this whole new way when I left, and I was so terrified. And after I got on this path and after I started to do this inner work, you know, further down the road, I was able to realize that the reason I kept hurting myself and I kept doing these destructive things was because I didn't believe that I deserved to have a good life, because my ex, Mike, I thought that if he wasn't in a good place, that I shouldn't be in a good place as well. So I was punishing myself, right? And then I started to realize that that came from my childhood growing up, because for some reason, when I was very young, I took on the role of caring for my mom and of trying to make her, you know, to try to please her. And I thought it was my job to try and, you know, fix her or help her or whatever. And I felt like I had failed in that. And so I believed in my subconscious somewhere, it was a driving belief in my life, that I didn't deserve a happy and healthy life, that I didn't deserve any good in my life, because I had failed in the marriage with Mike, and because before that I had failed in my mom. And so because that driving, I deserve to be punished, you know, belief was driving my life, I had to learn how to clear that before I was able to start taking care of myself. And for me, that meant, you know, forgiving myself for not being able to save the marriage, forgiving myself for whatever had happened with Mike, forgiving myself for trying to take care of myself, you know, for leaving and for trying to take care of myself. Like, it was a lot of forgiveness, and you know, that came over time. And I had to peel it back a layer at a time. And it also came, you know, down to learning how to accept that I did the best that I could and that I didn't deserve punishment because of the choices that I made. Like, I really had to forgive myself, and I had to forgive those around me that I felt like I had let down in some way. And I had to forgive my mom because I started to get very mad at her because I started to see where I picked up these habits. Like, once you used to raise your awareness, I was like, geez, no wonder my marriage fell out like that, because basically I just repeated my childhood, you know? So it was really, you know, a layer at a time. I started to see these things, and a layer at a time I started to forgive myself, until I really started to change that story, and I started to believe that it was worthwhile and that I could change my life. But Stephanie, start now just by asking yourself, if you can just sort of kind of identify, why do you think you're not worthy right now? Did someone tell you you weren't worthy growing up? Were you in a relationship where someone constantly told you you weren't worthwhile? Like, just try and see if you can get to, you know, at least kind of where this feeling comes from, and then start asking you if that's the story that you want to keep playing in your life. Does that belief support you? Of course not. So what can you believe instead? What can you tell yourself instead, right? See if you can start to understand the story that you're telling and where that came from, and then gently look at that and gently see if you can start to understand where you pick that up, because usually we pick up these false stories, these false beliefs, and we're not even aware that we've done it. You know, either someone will tell us that, or a relationship will play out a certain way. And the important thing is, as we look back and we start to see where we picked these things up, to do so with compassion and forgiveness. Because I started to understand that my mom she was doing the best she could. She wasn't trying to make my life difficult or to mold me into this person that I became. You know, she was doing the best that she could. And so it's important to look back with compassion. But just start to see what story is driving that, and start to see if you can turn that around and start to tell a better story. Of course, in the course, in the full course, we pull this back a layer at a time, and you start to really understand where you picked up this false belief that you are not deserving of all the good in the world, that you are deserving of. It says you're much better at resisting, denying, and not accepting and or allowing the good. So see if you can just, gently look back. Where did that start? Where did you pick up that idea? Oh, good, you're here. Great. I'm so happy when I talk and I actually get response back. It feels so satisfying. One day I'm going to figure out how to do live videos where people can call in and I can answer questions that way. But in any case, I'm glad you're here. So start to think about where you picked that up. A false belief, it's false. No matter where you picked it up, it's false. And start to gently see if you can turn that around in your mind and start telling a better feeling story. Because again, once you start to support yourself, your mind will naturally open up this way, and you'll start naturally asking these questions. So that's why these questions come up in this way. And that's awesome. All right, Stacy says, how do we stop ourselves before we start overeating? We know we're not really hungry, but I find myself in a zone where I'm not thinking, just eating. Why do we do this? All right, Stacy, if you are just eating mindlessly, right, and you're not even aware that you're eating, it's just because you're doing it from this subconscious level. You're not even fully aware that you're eating. It's just mindless eating, right? And if that's the case, then once you raise your awareness and you set the intention to notice when you start to eat, when you don't really need to eat, then you can just say, oh, wait a minute, I'm eating and I don't need to be. I choose not to, right? You put yourself back in the power of choice, because you always have the power to choose. You always have the power to make a choice. And so you can stop yourself just by setting the intention to be aware. I want to be aware. I'm going to notice when I start to eat when I don't need to, and then you can make the choice to stop, right? But if there's an emotional component to this, if you are eating to emotionally try and sedate yourself, or to emotionally try and, if you have strong emotions that you're not willing to face, or you have strong emotions that you just want to push down, and you're using the food to sort of sedate the emotions, or to sort of push the emotions down. Oh, sorry, I get these messages that says it's almost full. I don't know why. Then there's an extra step there where you need to give yourself the emotional support that you need, because if you're eating and it's coming and the craving to eat is not coming from hunger, like from physical feeling like I need to eat, then eating is not going to make that feel better, right? It might make you feel better in the moment, like an instant thing, because it's a distraction, because of, I'm guessing you're probably eating, if you're doing it for emotional reasons, if it's emotional, sugar, carbs, things that will sort of give you that immediate spike. Jody, if I could just do it, it would be done. I need to know how to do it. Right. Well, the how is going to be attached to the emotions. If you're eating for the emotional reasons and not just mindless, we can be mindlessly eating where we just don't know we're doing it. Most likely this is emotionally attached. And so the how comes in emotionally taking care of getting our needs met, right? So you need to, before you start eating is the best time, because that moment before you start to eat is really an awesome time where you can find out so much. Because if you can set the intention that before I start to overeat or before I start to emotionally eat, I'm going to stop and actually make myself aware and start to notice what it is I'm feeling or what it is I'm trying not to feel. If you raise your awareness around those emotions, because usually this is all very unconscious, but once you start to raise your consciousness around the thoughts that drive you, you will be able to catch yourself before you start much faster, right? So if you catch yourself before you start, then you can stop and say, what is this about? What am I trying to feel, or what am I trying not to feel? And you give yourself the chance to process these emotions without food. So what I always suggest is that you try to identify what you're feeling. If you can't really identify it, if it's just sort of an itchy feeling is what I always call it, and it just feels like overwhelmment or anxiety or whatever, if you can pinpoint it and you can be like, I know I'm feeling this way because this occurred, great. If you can't, then just sit with the feelings. Go like, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling itchy, I'm feeling that feeling I get. Set a timer, like a minute to a minute and a half, and just allow yourself to feel whatever it is these emotions are. I know it can feel scary at first, and you might cry when you sit there, because if you're going for food to try and push the emotions down, these emotions are strong. And when you suddenly get still and sit with these emotions, what you're going to do is you're going to process these emotions, and it's not uncommon that you will start to cry, or you'll start to feel really, emotional, and just allow it. Just show yourself that you can handle these emotions without food, and allow yourself the chance to process these emotions. If you start crying, awesome, let yourself cry. If you feel like screaming for a few minutes, do that. Do whatever you got to do to feel and release these emotions, because what happens when you push them down is they don't go away. They just, they still come back up to surface. If you allow yourself to be a human being and to feel whatever it is you're feeling, and every emotion is valid. Don't try and, a lot of people think that their emotions aren't valid and they don't deserve to feel a certain way and they shouldn't be feeling this way, and I just don't want to be feeling this way, and I don't want to be like, it feels wrong to feel such strong emotions to some of us. It was for me. Allow yourself just to actually sit with the emotions, right? To actually allow yourself to process and feel those emotions. And when you do that, when you stop running away from the emotions, I always say it's like, it's a lion that you run, like if you're running away from a lion, it's the fear that keeps you stuck. But when you stop and you actually face the lion loses its power, because you are facing it, because you're facing the fear. And then the emotions don't feel so overwhelming. You don't feel so powerless, and you actually allow yourself to process these emotions. That's a true act of self-care, allowing yourself to feel the emotions, allowing yourself to go there. And just, again, setting the timer, I think, helps, because it gives you sort of this set time, and it just gives you something you can focus on. Like, okay, I'm going to do it for this amount of time. You may find that the timer goes off and you want to pick up a pen and write something out. Go for it. Like, follow your instincts. Once you're starting to feel and release those emotions, follow your instincts. Follow your instincts to what feels next, into what you should do next. But know that processing those emotions will change your strong desire to eat, not to feel anymore, or to drink, not to feel anymore, because you've already felt and you've already dealt with it. So that's how, that's really, really a helpful tool and a helpful way of dealing with your emotions. So if you're eating just from a mindless point of view, then you can usually just say, oh wait, I'm eating and I don't want to eat. But if you're eating to fill an emotional void, you got to do the emotional work first. You have to give yourself, you're welcome, Tina. You want to give yourself that space to allow yourself to process and deal with those emotions, right? It's like we don't want to over-identify with them and dramatize it, but we also don't want to completely ignore them. We want to allow ourselves to have them. We want to emotionally support ourselves, and we want to show up for ourselves and say, can I just, allow myself to feel this instead of constantly pushing it away, right? When you push it away, it gets all built up, and then that itchy feeling like gets to be so much you can't even imagine. At least for me, like it almost felt like the momentum is so strong and it's just going. But if you take just a minute to collect yourself, just try it and see how it goes. And again, if you try it and it doesn't go well, remember, if you didn't watch the beginning, I'll say it again, conscious destructive choices are much, it's a huge step forward from unconscious destructive. So, unconscious destructive behaviors is difficult when you don't even know you're doing it or why you're doing it. Once you get to the point where you're conscious of the destructive choices you're making, you're taking huge leaps forward, way. So, that's what it's about. It always makes me a little, not crazy, but I see some people that, in the emotional eating world, it'll say, go take a walk or do something else or listen to music that makes you feel better. All of that is fine, but you've got to sit there and deal with those emotions first. Taking a walk is not going to help you one bit if you don't get in there and start to actually deal with your emotions and get your emotional needs met and show yourself that you have the power to take care of yourself and to deal with whatever's going on in your life. Like that emotional work is the key. And it's not just true for people who eat too much or eat to try and push down the emotions. It's true for people who drink. It's true for people who drink. It's true for people who do drugs. It's true for people who overwork or overwork out. It's whatever you do or overshop. There's a million things that we do to try and push our fear down and to ignore the fear and ignore the emotions. But once we get to a place where we start emotionally taking care of ourselves, you'll find that life changes and you'll open your mind and suddenly you'll think of things that will help you out so you don't binge or go on whatever destructive path that you go down. Somebody from my full course, who I just adore and love so much, who's doing amazing work and she's incredibly courageous, she found that writing a note to herself and putting her credit card and the note in an envelope close to her door helps her, because before she's going to go binge or do whatever destructive things she's going to go do, she would go to the store to buy the wine and the carbs or whatever. And so if she reads this note that she wrote herself when she was in a better feeling place, it brings her back into a calmer place. And it helps her get into a conscious place where she's able to deal with her emotions in a way that isn't destructive, And that's, Jody, just so you know, the Inner Circle Facebook group for the full course is for people who join the full paid course. And I'm going to be opening enrollment again on January 1st, just FYI. So I won't approve you for that group because it's a closed group for people who are in the paid course. So it's nothing personal, but this group is free. But in any case, what happens is when you start to open up your mind and you start to find things that are going to help you, I give you lots of suggestions just like I do here. And I know not everybody can, if you can't take the full course or you can't, know that you will naturally start opening your mind and finding solutions that are good for you. I created the course because it's helpful to have support and it's helpful to have a roadmap. And again, you're the CEO of your health and your life, and the roadmap just helps you get you back on course. But everybody's path is different. There isn't one path. So that's why I created the course, and I will of course invite you to take the full course. But know that learning how to get your own emotional needs met will change your life, and doing this beginning work of starting to support yourself will start to open your mind so that you find solutions that are going to work for you, and you sort of test out the things that I suggest, like test out the timer thing and see how that works, and then follow your intuition to what you need to do next to release that and to pull yourself back into a place of, hold on, I got this. I can sit with these emotions, right? This will change how you handle and deal with life in a very different way, because the emotional eating and whatever else you do to distract yourself from the fear, once you deal with the fear head on, you'll find that it shifts everything. Everything. All right, so that was a really long answer. All right, there's a couple more questions here. So Carole, I hope I'm saying that name right. I love all these beautiful different names. Carole, I know I'm here to learn how to push past barriers. I'm ready. Good, I'm glad you're ready. Like you've described in your emails, I'm a classic self-sabotager. I know what to do. I start and feel good, but don't get past a few weeks before giving in and taking 3 steps back. Okay, so that is exactly as I talked about. You need to really start to think about what are the blocks and the beliefs that are keeping you stuck in sabotage. And when I release the free course on January 1st, there's going to be a lot more information to help you with this. But one of the questions I always, or one of the exercises I always do in that introduction video is, I had a call come in, so hopefully I'm still here. One of the, looking shiny. One of the introduction exercises that I always give is, take out a blank sheet, and at the top of the sheet, just write this. And anybody listening on this call can do this. This is such a great beginning exercise. And I say beginning, but you can use this all the time at different parts of your life. So I've used this for lots of different things. Right at the top of the sheet, what I believe about weight loss is, or what I believe about healthy behavior is. And then just set the intention to, I'm sorry, I read a comment and I got totally thrown off. So right at the top of the sheet, what I believe about weight loss is, or what I believe about healthy behaviors is, whatever it is you're trying to change in your life. And then just dump onto the page whatever instantly comes into your mind. Just total brain dump. Don't overthink it. Don't edit it. Don't say, ooh, that's ugly, I can't write that, because whatever feels emotionally charged to you on that sheet, that's what you need to deal with. And I think it helps before you do this exercise to listen. You can go online to a place called calm.com and just listen to whatever nature sound feels right to you for like 5 minutes. So you get your mind into a calmer, more open, creative space. Listen to calm.com for 5 minutes, right at the top of a sheet, what I believe about healthy behaviors is, or what I believe about weight loss is, or what I believe about food is, whatever you're struggling with the most. And then just brain dump. Whatever comes into your mind, just write it down. Don't overthink it. Don't edit it. Don't criticize yourself for what you're putting down there. Just put it all down. And then over the next, day, make the intention that anytime something pops into your head, you're going to jot it down that sheet and carry that sheet with you for a full day. And just see what you end up with on that sheet. Just see what is going on, because you will find that whatever you put on that sheet is what you believe. And you might be really shocked to find out what you believe, but it'll give you insights into why you keep sabotaging yourself. Again, in the full course, we dive into this really deeply, and I have exercises to help you do that. But this beginning exercise will give you a lot of insight and will get you on the right track. You'll be like, ooh, and do it, do it every 3 months and see what else is on there, because again, it's a layer at a time. But Carole, and I hope I'm saying that name right, that will help you to understand why you're sabotaging yourself. It may help you to understand what that's about, because usually when we are sabotaging ourselves, it's because we have a false belief that gets in the way of us being able to reach our goals, right? Like, it's not safe for me to lose weight. If I lose weight or change my life, I'm going to actually have to start dating, and that scares me. Or a lot of them are about, if I lose weight, men are going to find me attractive, and I'm scared of that. Like, whatever those beliefs are that keep you in sabotage, starting to understand them and then gently work your way out of them will give you the mental green light that you need to start getting past that. So hopefully that makes sense. You say, let me finish reading your question here. I definitely have some personal relationship issues that I know are affecting me, where my self-belief, I don't feel heard or valued. Carolee or Caroline, I'm not sure. But anyway, go back to, and I'll post it here when I'm done, to the video I did last week, because I talk about staying in your own lane and how you can do this work no matter what's going on with the relationships around you. Trying to wait for this person in your life to hear you or to value you is giving all of your power away, right? You're saying to him, I'll be able to, and I can relate to this. And when you go back and watch the video from last week, you'll see why. When you say to the other person, I can't change until you value me, until you hear me, you're giving all of your power away to him, right? Take your power back and say, I am going to value myself. I am going to hear myself, and I am going to support myself and change for me and not make it about him, right? Know that if he wants to follow you on this path or get on a healthy path, that will happen naturally. So go back and watch the video from last week where I talk about staying in your own lane and how you can take your power back and start changing your life regardless of the relationship that you're in. I can relate. The positive affirmations are helping, and I found myself in a better mood. I guess my biggest question is, what else can I be doing that will help accelerate the positive and see a real breakthrough? All right, well, watch. I think the beginning of this will help as well because I give you the big picture. The belief exercise will help, and then go back and watch the staying in your own lane. It's a moment-to-moment thing. What will help will be to start supporting, valuing, and hearing yourself. What will help is to start to understand the beliefs and blocks that are keeping you stuck. And the belief exercise will help you do that for sure. Oh, thank you, Anne. I'm doing a Facebook Live inside my Inner Circle group as well. So I'm going to answer this last question here and then I have to run. Thank you, Anne. Jamie says, I think what's holding me back from finally succeeding at reaching my ideal weight is that I identify as someone with a weight issue. Who am I if I'm not constantly trying to lose weight? How do I get past that thought belief? Oh, Jamie, I can so relate to that because I was constantly in a struggle with food my whole life. I mean, ever since I was very little, it was always very little. I mean, by the time I was 15, I was dieting. By the time I was 16, I was eating foods in the basements and rebelling against all the food rules. And this constant struggle with food was something that was always in my life. And it can feel weird when you start to break away from those behaviors because they're like who you are. Like, who am I if I am not trying to diet? Who am I if I'm not the person striving to be a certain size? Like, I had no idea what that looked like, but trust that you will be a better, stronger, happier version of you. I mean, you're still going to be you. This doesn't change you. You at the core is the same, but you'll just be yourself without the struggle. You'll be yourself without the judgment. You'll be a happier you, if that makes sense. And so, try this. Try writing the story. Just try as an exercise. How would you like your life to look? Like, who would you be if you weren't the person who was struggling with her weight all the time or with food all the time? What would that look like to you? Just, again, I would listen to calm.com for 5 minutes, get a blank sheet and just say, what would I like to be? Who would I be without this? And then just let your mind kind of flow and you get to decide. You get to decide who you get to be without that. You get to decide what that would feel like. You get past that thought or the belief by continuing to convince yourself that you have the ability to create whatever kind of life that you want. And it does not have to be a life with struggle. That's a choice that you're making, right? And you're working your way out of that. So I would just free flow with that and start to think about, who do you want to be without the struggle? How do you want to feel, right? How do you want to show up in the world? And get really clear on what that feels like. Like, make it a fun exercise, like, I would feel like this if I didn't have that. And I do some of this in Smaller Size, Bigger Life. Actually, the very first exercise that you do is all about changing that bigger life story for yourself. So just start to think about what you want to feel like, you know, like how you would feel and how you would be and how you would act, and just free flow and write that story, and that will start to loosen your idea up, because you get to be whoever you want to be. And you get past that thought of relief just by starting to convince yourself that you have the power to create whatever you want in your life. And that who you would be is somebody who feels free, and somebody who feels unconstrained, and somebody who feels happy, and somebody who can, you know, make food choices with ease, and somebody who cares for themselves, and all of that. Okay, so I have to run. It's 3 o'clock. I have to jump over into my other group. It's been a really busy week, and I'm going away. I'm leaving on Sunday, and I'll be away next week and the following week. So I won't be doing another live until the end of this month. And then I'll keep this group open until after I close enrollment on January 11th, so I can get a couple more lives in there. Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Great. I'll be curious to see how it goes. Make it fun. And then once you have that feeling, Jamie, you know how you want to feel, spend like 5 minutes a day just imagining what that feels like. You know, like once you write that story and it feels really good to you, sort of just, you know, we use our imagination all the time, and usually we use it to create scary scenarios for ourselves, right? Use your imagination to think about how awesome it would feel when you are in that sort of life where you're not worrying about your weight anymore. Like just sit with that for a few minutes a day and just imagine it, and get yourself into a really good feeling place about it. And that will help you so much, because you'll basically be putting those, you know, from a neuroscience perspective, and I'm in a neuroscience academy, so it's so interesting to think about it from a neuroscience perspective. But what you're doing is you're putting, you're making new grooves in your brain that's allowing you to see yourself in a new way. It's like you're creating new neural pathways in your mind. And by imagining how you want to feel, and again, it's the feeling, right? You are sort of in making those grooves really defined, and that's sort of opening you up to change. I'm not sure if that makes sense from the neuroscience perspective, but you're basically creating new neural pathways and imagining this new you, this you who can feel awesome, right? So connect to that feeling. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Molly, I'm so glad you're gonna do that too. You know what, and test things out. See what feels right to you. That's what I always tell everybody in my full course. Try it out, see what feels good, make it your own. Realize that you have so much wisdom, and just get to an easy place about it. Don't make it seem like I have to do this or it's not gonna work. Be easy about it. Be easy about it, make it your own, make it feel good, and just sort of open your mind up and make it easy. I used to do this so much with, oh, thank you so much, Lynn. I love you too. I love everybody in this group. I attract the most beautiful people in the world to these groups, and it makes me so happy. Again, it makes me realize that there's so much love and beauty in the world that we don't always get to see, because mostly on the news we only see scary things. But I'll talk about media another time. But it's amazing groups, and I love that you guys are here, and I love that I can share the things that have helped me. But again, try these things out, try these exercises out, make it your own, make it fun, and make it easy, and keep telling yourself you're right where you need to be with this. And this work of just starting to train yourself to pay attention to what thoughts make you feel good, and to focus your attention on things that make you feel good, is huge work. And conscious bad decisions is a huge step forward from unconscious bad decisions. So wherever you are, you're exactly in the right place, and I'm honored that you're here. So thank you so much, and I'll be back in this group, like I said, at the end of this group. I'll keep this open probably until like January, I don't know, sometime in January, just because I'm going to be away for those 2 weeks, and I want to be able to get a few more lives in. So thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.